The mockery begins. The galaxy was alive with chatter, but one message stood out among the stars. It came from the powerful Zorvax Empire, a race of towering, advanced aliens who prided themselves on their technology and military might. Their leader, High Commander Xalrax, broadcasted his message across the galaxy, mocking humanity in front of countless species. Humans, he sneered, his voice echoing through the universal network. Small, weak, and primitive. Your tiny fleets and outdated weapons are laughable. Surrender now, and we might spare your precious little planet. The other alien races watched the broadcast with curiosity. Humanity, they thought, was indeed fragile compared to the mighty Zorvax. The Zorvax had conquered dozens of worlds, each one falling in days. It seemed Earth would be next, and no one expected much resistance. On Earth, people watched the broadcast with clenched fists and angry hearts. The humiliation was unbearable, but deep underground, in a hidden base beneath the Rocky Mountains, the most brilliant minds on the planet were focused on something far more important. For decades, humanity had been working in silence, creating a weapon that would change the rules of warfare forever. Commander James Carter, leader of Earth's United Defense Force, stood in front of his team. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "Let them laugh," he said firmly. "They think they know us, but they don't. This time, we're not just defending Earth. We're making a statement to the entire galaxy." The project, codenamed Phantom Fleet, had been a closely guarded secret. It wasn't just another fleet of ships, it was something entirely new. Using advanced cloaking technology and precision weaponry, Earth's scientists had built an invisible fleet capable of attacking without being seen. The fleet was humanity's answer to the arrogance of the Zorvax and every other species that underestimated them. Meanwhile, aboard the Zorvax flagship, High Commander Xalrax laughed with his officers. They were reviewing Earth's known defenses, pointing out weaknesses, and joking about how quickly they would conquer the planet. The holographic display in front of them showed Earth's small fleet, its ships outdated and poorly armed, compared to the sleek and powerful Zorvax vessels. "Pathetic," one of the officers said with a grin. "This won't even be a battle. It will be a cleanup operation." High Commander Xalrax leaned back in his chair, his golden armor glinting under the ship's lights. "Humanity is nothing but an insect. They should thank us for sparing them the embarrassment of resisting." But humanity wasn't about to roll over and surrender. Across Earth, the people came together, united by a shared resolve. Scientists fine-tuned the fleet's systems, engineers worked around the clock, and soldiers prepared for the fight of their lives. The project had to be perfect. There was no room for error. The first phase of the plan was simple but crucial. Make the Zorvax overconfident. Let them believe they were invincible. Humanity's fleet remained hidden, and Earth broadcasted no response to the Zorvax insults. The silence was deafening, and it only fueled the arrogance of the invaders. "They're scared," Xalrax declared, his grin widening. "They know they can't win." But in the silence, humanity was preparing its greatest weapon, the element of surprise. As the Zorvax fleet approached Earth, sensors scanned the planet and its orbit. The results were underwhelming. There were no large fleets waiting to intercept them, no hidden weapons ready to fire. To the Zorvax, it looked like Earth had already accepted defeat. High Commander Xalrax addressed his fleet with a booming voice. "Today, we remind the galaxy why the Zorvax Empire is unstoppable. Humanity will fall, and their world will belong to us." Cheers erupted across the fleet as ships moved into formation. The Zorvax were confident, perhaps too confident. They didn't realize that humanity was watching their every move. Deep in the underground base, Commander Carter received the latest reports. The Zorvax were close, and everything was going according to plan. He looked at his team and nodded. "It's time." The broadcast channels opened, and a single message was sent to the Zorvax fleet. It was short and simple, but it carried a chilling weight. "Prepare to face the unseen." The message was met with confusion and laughter aboard the Zorvax flagship. "What kind of joke is this?" An officer sneered. "Are they trying to scare us with riddles?" High Commander Xalrax shook his head, amused. "Let them play their little games. It won't save them." But the laughter didn't last long. Within minutes, strange energy readings began to appear on their sensors. The Zorvax scrambled to understand what was happening, but their technology couldn't identify the source. It was as if the enemy didn't exist. On Earth, Commander Carter watched the Zorvax fleet on his screen. The time had come to show them what humanity was truly capable of. "Activate the fleet," he ordered. And with that, the Phantom fleet came to life. The unseen threat. The Zorvax fleet hung in orbit, their confidence beginning to waver. Their advanced sensors scored the vast expanse of space, but there was nothing. No ships, no energy signatures, just the quiet hum of their own engines. High Commander Xalrax frowned as he stared at the holographic display. "What are they hiding?" he muttered, his golden eyes narrowing. Around him, his officers exchanged uneasy glances. The human silence was unnerving, and the strange energy readings had not gone unnoticed. "We've scanned the area 5 times, Commander," said Lieutenant Zorvik, the fleet's chief analyst. "There's nothing out there. It must be some sort of interference." Xalrax slammed his fist onto the console, his patience thinning. "Interference doesn't destroy ships. Keep scanning. I want answers." Meanwhile, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Earth's command center was alive with activity. The room buzzed with quiet but focused energy as the Phantom fleet moved into position. Each ship, cloaked and undetectable, hovered just beyond the range of the Zorvax sensors. Commander Carter stood at the center of the room, his eyes locked on the live feed from the fleet. Tiny markers on the screen represented the invisible ships, each one poised like a predator ready to pounce. His voice was calm, but there was an edge of anticipation in his tone. "Remember, precision is key. They can't fight what they can't see." The first strike was about to begin. Back in orbit, the Zorvax fleet detected a sudden spike in energy near their rear formation. "Commander, we're picking up an anomaly," shouted a technician. "Sector 17, just for a second, then it vanished." Xalrax's gaze snapped to the technician. "Send a scout ship. I want eyes on that area now." Before the scout could even launch, the anomaly appeared again, this time closer. And then it happened. Without warning, the Zorvax cruiser Vigilance erupted into a ball of fire and debris. Its shields, the pride of Zorvax engineering, failed to stop the attack. The explosion sent shockwaves through the fleet, both physical and psychological. "Report." Xalrax barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "What just happened?" "No weapon signatures detected," Lieutenant Zorvik stammered, his hands shaking as he analyzed the data. "It's like they were hit by nothing." The bridge went silent, the weight of those words sinking in. Hit by nothing. How could that be? Far from the chaos, the Phantom fleet moved like shadows, their presence felt but never seen. Each ship targeted a specific point on their enemy's vessels, weak spots identified through years of careful study. The Zorvax, despite their arrogance, had vulnerabilities, and humanity had learned how to exploit them. Commander Carter watched as another Zorvax ship disintegrated on the screen. The room erupted into quiet cheers, but Carter raised a hand to silence them. "Stay focused," he said. "This is just the beginning." On the Zorvax flagship, panic was spreading. Officers shouted over each other, trying to make sense of the invisible enemy. Xalrax clenched his jaw, his confidence unraveling. "Enough of this madness," he roared. "Deploy the defensive drones. Sweep every inch of this sector. I want those ships found." The drones, small and agile, launched from the Zorvax ships in swarms, their sensors tuned to detect even the faintest disturbance. For a moment, it seemed like they might have a chance to fight back. But humanity had planned for this too. The Phantom Fleet's cloaking systems emitted false readings, leading the drones on wild chases through empty space. By the time a drone approached a real ship, it was already too late. The humans had anticipated every move, every reaction, and used it to their advantage. One by one, the drones fell silent. Zalrax's hands tightened around the edge of his console, his golden armor no longer gleaming with pride but with tension. "How is this possible?" he whispered. The great Zorvax fleet, the pride of their empire, was being dismantled, and they couldn't even see their attackers. Suddenly, the human voice returned to their communication systems. It was calm, steady, and unyielding. "You laughed at us. You thought we were weak. But now, Commander Xalrax, who is laughing?" The message cut off, leaving the Zorvax bridge in stunned silence. The words echoed in Xalrax's mind, taunting him. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: fear. Back on Earth, Commander Carter allowed himself a small smile. "Message sent," he said, turning to his team. "Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of." The unseen threat was no longer a mystery. It was a force the Zorvax would never forget. The real battle was just beginning, and humanity held all the cards. The first strike. The silence that followed the humans' cryptic message was deafening aboard the Zorvax flagship. High Commander Xalrax stared at the flickering holographic display of the fleet. 2 ships had already vanished from the formation, their destruction unexplainable. The mighty Zorvax war machine was faltering, and the enemy remained unseen. "How do we fight ghosts?" muttered an officer, breaking the uneasy silence. Xalrax shot him a glare that could pierce steel. "We fight with everything we have," he growled. "Increase shield output. Form a tighter defensive grid. No more surprises." The fleet adjusted its formation, pulling together like a coiled serpent. Defensive drones swarmed out in greater numbers, their sensors stretched to the limits. The Zorvax would not be caught off guard again, or so they thought. Far above, hidden in the vast darkness of space, the Phantom Fleet hovered in silence. Each ship was cloaked in layers of experimental technology, making them invisible to all known forms of detection. They were humanity's ultimate gamble, a fleet not designed for strength or size, but for precision and stealth. Aboard the human flagship Eclipse, Captain Mira Lawson observed the Zorvax fleet's adjustments with cold calculation. She tapped a glowing control panel, zooming in on the defensive grid. "They're adapting," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Good. Let's see how they handle Phase 2. Her first officer, Lieutenant Diego Park, nodded. "Targets locked, Captain." "Orders." Mira allowed a small smile. "Fire." Without warning, the Zorvax destroyer Dominion erupted into a fireball. Its shields, designed to withstand planetary bombardments, had failed in an instant. The explosion sent debris flying, tearing into the hulls of nearby ships. "Report." Xalrax barked, his voice echoing through the chaotic bridge. "They're targeting weak points in our shields," shouted an officer. "Pinpoint precision, impossible without visual contact." Xalrax slammed his fist onto the console. "They can't see us. It's a trick. Find them now." But before the crew could act, another ship fell, then another. The destruction was methodical, calculated, and merciless. The Zorvax fleet, so proud, so invincible, was being dismantled piece by piece. Back aboard the Eclipse, Captain Lawson watched the destruction unfold with a grim expression. "They're scattering," she noted, as the Zorvax ships began to break formation in panic. "Exactly what we wanted." Lieutenant Park raised an eyebrow. "They're running." "No," Mira corrected. "They're searching. They think they can find us if they spread out. But that's exactly when they're most vulnerable." On the Zorvax flagship, Xalrax paced the bridge, his composure unraveling. The mighty Zorvax Empire had never faced an enemy like this. Every strategy, Every weapon they had relied on for centuries was useless. And yet, the humans, those primitive beings, had outmaneuvered them at every turn. "They're playing with us," he muttered under his breath. His pride as a commander burned, but more than that, he felt an unfamiliar chill creeping up his spine. Fear. The human voice returned, cutting through the static of their comms. "High Commander Xalrax," it said, calm and resolute. "This isn't a battle. It's a message. We are not the weaklings you believed us to be. This is your last chance to retreat." Xalrax clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "They think they can intimidate us," he growled. "Open fire on every quadrant. I don't care if it's blind. Fire everything." The Zorvax fleet unleashed a storm of energy weapons, filling the void with deadly light. Beams of plasma and arcs of electromagnetic energy scorched the empty space, but they struck nothing. The Phantom fleet remained hidden, untouched, and unyielding. Aboard the Eclipse, Captain Lawson watched the futile display with steely eyes. "They're panicking," she said. "They're wasting energy. Just as planned." The Zorvax flagship shook violently as another explosion rocked the fleet. This time, it was one of their prized dreadnoughts, a ship that symbolized the Empire's dominance. Its destruction sent shockwaves, not just through space, but through the hearts of every Zorvax aboard. Xalrax's voice thundered over the bridge. "Find them. Now." But the officers had no answers. The Phantom fleet moved like whispers in the dark, striking and disappearing before the Zorvax could react. Their cloaking technology was beyond anything the Zorvax had ever encountered, a seamless blend of light manipulation, signal distortion, and electromagnetic cloaking. And it wasn't just the technology. Humanity had perfected the art of war: patience, precision, and adaptability. The Zorvax relied on brute force, but the humans had mastered something far more dangerous: strategy. "High Commander," a trembling voice called from the sensor station. "We've lost half the fleet." Xalrax froze, the weight of those words crashing down on him. Half. The Zorvax Empire's pride, reduced to rubble by an enemy they couldn't even see. The human voice returned once more, sharp and unrelenting. "Surrender now, or there won't be a fleet left to save." For the first time in his long career, Xalrax hesitated. This was no longer a battle of strength. It was a battle of wills, and humanity was proving to be the stronger force. As the fires of destruction lit the darkness of space, the Zorvax faced a truth they had never considered. The humans weren't the prey. They were the hunters. And the hunt had only just begun. Alien desperation. The once mighty Zorvax fleet was in shambles. Fires raged aboard crippled ships, and debris floated silently through space, a grim reminder of their failure. High Commander Xalrax stood rigid on the bridge of the flagship, his golden armor tarnished by the faint glow of the flames reflected in the viewports. "Status report," Xalrax demanded, his voice low but dangerous. An officer, clearly shaken, hesitated before responding. "Commander, our losses have exceeded 50%. The enemy remains undetected. Our drones and scanning equipment have proven ineffective. Enough." Xalrax interrupted, slamming his fist against the console. His fury was palpable, but beneath it, there was fear. Fear of an enemy he could not see. Fear of defeat. The Zorvax had never known fear before. In the depths of space, the Phantom fleet continued its silent assault. The Eclipse, cloaked and unseen, was the nerve center of the operation. Inside, Captain Mira Lawson studied the Zorvax formation. She admired their attempts to adapt, but their tactics were flawed, too rigid, too predictable. "They're scattering," Lieutenant Diego Park reported, trying to widen their sensor net. Mira nodded, her expression unreadable. Desperation. "They're spreading themselves thinner, hoping to spot us. Let's exploit that. Begin Phase 3. A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the fleet's command network. The next phase of the plan was humanity's masterpiece, a series of decoy energy signatures designed to pull the Zorvax apart even further. Aboard the Zorvax flagship, alarms blared as multiple energy spikes appeared on their scanners. "Commander," an officer cried, "we're detecting enemy activity in sectors 7, 9, and 14. Zalrax's eyes narrowed. "Finally," he said, his voice tinged with grim satisfaction. "Concentrate fire on all 3 sectors. Deploy our remaining heavy fighters. This ends now." The fleet shifted, directing its firepower toward the apparent enemy positions. Plasma beams and kinetic projectiles tore through the void, lighting up the darkness with violent flashes. But as the dust settled, it became clear they had struck nothing but empty space. "It's a diversion," Lieutenant Zorvik muttered, his voice hollow. "They're toying with us." Zalrax clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "No," he said through gritted teeth. "They're testing us. They want to see how far we'll go." Behind him, his officers exchanged uneasy glances. The once unshakable commander now seemed uncertain, even paranoid. And the humans weren't just dismantling his fleet, they were dismantling his confidence. On the Eclipse, Mira Lawson leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the enemy's erratic movements. "They've fallen for it," she said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "Now let's finish what we started." The Phantom Fleet's ships moved into their final positions, each one targeting a critical point in the Zorvax formation. Cloaked and undetectable, they maneuvered with precision, guided by years of planning and intelligence. "Prepare for synchronized strikes," Mira ordered. "Let's remind them why they should never underestimate humanity." The Zorvax fleet was unraveling. Ships collided in the chaos, their desperate attempts to evade invisible attackers causing more harm than the strikes themselves. Commanders on individual ships began acting independently, abandoning the chain of command in their panic. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Vanguard and the Predator," an officer reported, his voice shaking. "Remaining ships are reporting heavy damage. We can't hold this formation." Zalrax stared at the tactical display, his golden eyes flickering with something between rage and despair. "Hold your ground," he bellowed. "We are the Zorvax. We do not run from a fight." But even as he shouted, he knew the truth. This wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Suddenly, a new message came through. The human voice was calm and deliberate, but this time, there was a sharp edge to it. "High Commander Zalrax," it said, "your fleet is crumbling. Your weapons are useless. Your pride has blinded you. Retreat now, or there won't be enough of your empire left to rebuild." Zalrax's jaw tightened, his pride warring with his survival instincts. He couldn't believe this was happening. The Zorvax, conquerors of worlds, brought to their knees by a species they had mocked. How had it come to this? "Commander," Lieutenant Zorvik said cautiously, "we have to consider." "No." Zalrax roared. "We do not retreat. We are not cowards." But even as he spoke, the bridge trembled under the impact of another attack. Sparks flew from consoles, and the lights flickered. The once proud Zorvax flagship was showing cracks in its armor. On Earth, Commander Carter watched the unfolding chaos with a mix of satisfaction and determination. "They're breaking," he said, his voice steady. "But we're not here to destroy them completely. We need them to understand that humanity isn't just a threat. We're a force to be respected." He turned to his communications officer. "Prepare the final transmission." Back aboard the Eclipse, Captain Lawson received the update. She smiled faintly. "It's time to make our point." The Phantom Fleet pulled back, its ships vanishing into the void. For the first time in hours, the Zorvax fleet found itself in silence. But it wasn't a reprieve. It was the calm before the storm. And in that silence, the humans prepared their final move. The turning point. The Zorvax flagship trembled under the weight of its own despair. The once mighty fleet, hailed as invincible, was now a fragmented shadow of its former self. High Commander Zalrax stood at the center of the chaos, his golden armor dulled by the flickering lights of the damaged bridge. "Where are they?" he growled, his voice a mixture of fury and desperation. "Find them, or I'll find someone who can." But his officers had no answers. The Phantom fleet had vanished again, leaving only wreckage and uncertainty in its wake. "Commander," Lieutenant Zorvik spoke cautiously, his voice barely audible over the hum of damaged systems. "We've lost over 70% of our fleet. Communications are failing. If this continues..." Zalrax turned on him, his eyes blazing with rage. "If this continues, we lose everything. Do you want that, Lieutenant?" Zorvik flinched but stood his ground. "No, Commander. But perhaps it's time to consider the possibility of retreat." The suggestion hung in the air like a forbidden curse. Zalrax glared at his officer, his pride warring with the cold logic of survival. The Zorvax had never retreated in their history. To do so now, against a species they had mocked as primitive, was unthinkable. And yet, deep down, Zalrax knew there was no other option. In the void, the Phantom fleet watched from the shadows. Captain Mira Lawson aboard the Eclipse observed the Zorvax fleet's crumbling formation. Their panic was evident, their desperation almost palpable. "They're breaking apart," Lieutenant Diego Park reported. "Their ships are scattering, and their systems are in chaos. They're trying to regroup, but it's not working." Mira nodded, her expression calm but resolute. "Good. Now it's time to send them a message they'll never forget." With a simple command, the Phantom fleet began its final phase. A single human ship decloaked, its silhouette stark against the darkness of space. The Zorvax sensors immediately locked onto it, their systems struggling to process its sudden appearance. "Commander," an officer shouted aboard the Zorvax flagship, "we've detected an enemy vessel, Sector 6. Zalrax's eyes lit up with renewed fury. "Finally, all ships, concentrate fire on that target. I want it destroyed." The Zorvax fleet, or what remained of it, turned its full attention to the lone human ship. Beams of plasma and bursts of kinetic rounds streaked through the void, converging on the target. But just as the attacks reached the ship, it disappeared. The Zorvax weapons struck only empty space. What happened?" An officer stammered. "Did they cloak again?" Before anyone could respond, another human ship appeared on the opposite side of the fleet, followed by another and another. Each time, the Zorvax turned to fire, but the ships vanished before they could be hit. "They're playing with us," Lieutenant Zorvik whispered, his voice trembling. "It's psychological warfare." Aboard the Eclipse, Mira smiled faintly. "They're running out of time and patience. Let's finish this." The Phantom fleet moved into position, each ship targeting a critical point in the Zorvax formation. The coordinated strike was designed not just to destroy but to disarm, leaving the fleet powerless to continue the fight. "Fire," Mira commanded. In an instant, beams of energy streaked through the darkness, piercing Zorvax engines and disabling their weapon systems. Ships were left drifting, their power cores destabilized but intact. The destruction was precise, calculated, and devastating. On the Zorvax flagship, the lights flickered again as a powerful shockwave rocked the ship. Zalrax stumbled but caught himself, his pride crumbling alongside his fleet. "Commander," Zorvik said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're surrounded. Our engines are offline, and our weapons are disabled. We can't fight anymore." Zalrax clenched his fists, his golden armor now a mockery of his former glory. He turned to the main viewport, staring into the void as if he could will the humans to reveal themselves. "Open a channel to the humans," he said at last, his voice hollow. The communication line crackled to life, and the human voice returned, calm and firm. "High Commander Zalrax," the voice said, "your fleet is defeated. Your pride led you here, but it won't save you. You have two choices: surrender and leave this system, or face total annihilation." Zalrax's jaw tightened, his pride screaming at him to fight, to resist. But as he looked around the broken remnants of his fleet, he knew there was no choice. Humanity had outsmarted them, outmaneuvered them, and outclassed them. With a heavy heart, he gave the order he had sworn he would never give. "Stand down," he said. "Signal our surrender." Back on Earth, the command center erupted into quiet cheers as the Zorvac signal came through. Commander Carter stood at the center of the room, his expression a mix of relief and triumph. "They'll remember this day," he said quietly. "Not as the day humanity fought back, but as the day we proved we belong in the galaxy." Aboard the Eclipse, Mira Lawson allowed herself a rare smile. "Message sent," she said. "Now let's make sure they never forget it." The Phantom Fleet pulled back, leaving the Zorvacs to lick their wounds and carry their humiliation back to the stars. Humanity had not just survived, they had thrived. And the galaxy would never laugh at them again. A surprising alliance. The Zorvac's fleet limped away from Earth's orbit, its once mighty presence reduced to a humbled collection of battered ships. High Commander Zalrax sat silently in the command chair of his flagship, his golden armor dulled and tarnished by the weight of defeat. The bridge was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of damaged systems struggling to stay operational. The humans had granted them a corridor of safe retreat, but the shame of surrender clung to every Zorvax officer like a heavy fog. No one dared to speak. No one dared to look their commander in the eye. "Commander," Lieutenant Zorvac finally said, breaking the silence, "the humans have sent another transmission." Zalrax's eyes narrowed. He gestured for the message to play, expecting gloating or demands for further humiliation. Instead, a calm, measured voice filled the room. "High Commander Zalrax," the human voice began, "we know you've suffered a defeat today. But this battle wasn't about conquest. It was about understanding. We didn't destroy your fleet because we wanted to. We did it because we had no choice. We fight to survive, as all species do. And now, we offer you a choice." Zalrax leaned forward, his interest piqued despite himself. What could these humans possibly offer him? "You can return to your empire," the message continued, "and rebuild with this lesson in mind. Or you can choose another path, a path of alliance. Humanity does not seek war. We seek partnership, progress, and peace. What happened here today doesn't have to define our future." The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. They're offering an alliance?" Zorvac asked, disbelief etched on his face. Zalrax didn't answer immediately. His mind raced, grappling with the implications. The humans, a species the Zorvacs had ridiculed as weak and insignificant, had just demonstrated unmatched ingenuity and power. And now, they were extending a hand instead of a blade. "Why would they do this?" Zalrax finally muttered. "They could have destroyed us. They could have claimed victory and ended our empire." Zorvac hesitated before responding. Perhaps they'd value something more than victory. Back on Earth, Commander Carter stood in the command center, watching the retreating Zorvac's fleet on the main display. Beside him, diplomats and military advisors whispered among themselves, debating the risks and rewards of the message they had just sent. "Do you think they'll respond?" one advisor asked. Carter crossed his arms, his gaze steady. "They have to. The Zorvacs aren't fools. They've seen what we can do, and they know we're not interested in pointless destruction. If they're smart, they'll see this as an opportunity." Aboard the Eclipse, Captain Mira Lawson monitored the situation with a mix of skepticism and hope. The Zorvac's fleet was moving slower now, as if they were considering their next move. "They haven't left yet," Lieutenant Park observed. "Do you think they're actually thinking about it?" Mira nodded thoughtfully. "Zalrax isn't an idiot. He's proud, sure, but he knows a losing battle when he sees one. And he knows his empire won't survive another fight like this." Hours passed before the Zorvac's flagship finally sent a reply. On Earth, the message was received with bated breath. High Commander Xalrax appeared on the screen, his expression grim but composed. "Humans," he began, his voice heavy with a mix of reluctance and respect. "You have proven yourselves today. You fought with cunning and precision, not out of malice, but out of necessity. It is a strength we did not expect, a strength we must now acknowledge." He paused, his gaze steady. "We will accept your offer. But know this, the Zorvax do not forget their defeats. We will not be subjugated. This alliance, if it is to work, must be built on respect, not dominance." Commander Carter nodded, his expression neutral but his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Respect is all we've ever wanted," he said. "This is the beginning of something greater, for both our species." The announcement of the alliance sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Other races, long wary of the Zorvax Empire, watched in astonishment as the mighty conquerors forged a partnership with humanity. The humans, once underestimated and overlooked, were now seen as equals, perhaps even leaders. On the Zorvax flagship, Xalrax addressed his crew, his voice steady and commanding. "Today, we faced an enemy unlike any other. And today we learned what it means to be humbled. But we also gained something we never expected, a chance to grow stronger, not through conquest, but through unity." His officers listened in silence, their pride bruised but their respect for their commander intact. They knew this alliance would change everything, for the Zorvax, for humanity, and for the galaxy. Back on Earth, Commander Carter and Captain Mira Lawson stood side by side, watching the Zorvax fleet disappear into the distance. "Do you think they'll keep their word?" Mira asked. Carter smiled faintly. "They will. They're proud, but they're not fools. They've seen what we can do. And now, they've seen who we really are." The alliance was fragile, but it was real, a surprising turn of events that no one could have predicted. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't just surviving in the galaxy. They were leading it. Humanity's new reputation. The galaxy was abuzz. News of the alliance between humanity and the Zorvax Empire spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of space. The same species that once mocked Earth now whispered its name with awe and caution. Humanity, the underdog of the stars, had risen to prominence, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, resilience, and a surprising gesture of diplomacy. On Earth, celebrations erupted. For the first time in centuries, the planet stood united under a common banner. Commander Carter addressed the world from the heart of the United Defense Force headquarters, his words carried to every nation and colony. "Today," he said, his voice steady and powerful, "we have proven that humanity is not a species to be underestimated. We faced the might of the Zorvax Empire and emerged not just victorious, but stronger, because we chose cooperation over destruction. This is a victory for all of us, a victory for peace." The room erupted into applause, but Carter raised his hand for silence. "Let this be a lesson for the future. Our strength lies not only in our technology or our tactics, but in our ability to unite, to persevere, and to extend a hand when others expect a fist." Aboard the Eclipse, Captain Mira Lawson watched the live broadcast with her crew. The Phantom Fleet, now a legend in its own right, had returned to base, its ships still cloaked in secrecy. Mira's gaze shifted to the stars beyond the viewport. "We made history," Lieutenant Diego Parks said, standing beside her. "But do you think the galaxy will ever truly accept us?" Mira smiled faintly. "Acceptance doesn't come overnight, Diego. But they'll respect us, and respect is the foundation of everything." The crew nodded in agreement. They had done their part, and now it was up to humanity to build on the foundation they had laid. Meanwhile, aboard the Zorvax flagship, High Commander Xalrax sat in his private quarters, reviewing the latest reports. The damage to his fleet was staggering, and the shame of defeat still lingered in his mind. But there was something else now, a cautious sense of hope. "Commander," Lieutenant Zorvax said as he entered the room, "the humans have sent us schematics for joint technology development. They propose integrating their cloaking systems with our energy weapons. With this, we could create a fleet unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. Xalarax raised an eyebrow. They're willing to share their greatest secret, even after everything. Zorvek nodded. It seems they trust us, or they want us to trust them. The commander leaned back, his golden eyes reflecting the holographic schematics. Perhaps we misjudged them. They are not weak. They are not primitive. They are adaptable. A pause hung in the air before Xalarax spoke again, his tone more reflective than commanding. And adaptability, Lieutenant, may be the greatest strength of all. Across the galaxy, other empires and species reacted to the alliance in different ways. The Velkrin Syndicate, a shadowy coalition of opportunistic traders, began reconsidering their plans to exploit Earth's resources. The Aetherian Concord, a federation of peaceful starfarers, extended an invitation to humanity to join their council. Even the warlike Kragner clans, known for their brutal conquests, hesitated before encroaching on human territory. Humanity's reputation had changed. Where once they were seen as small and insignificant, they were now viewed as a force to be reckoned with, not just for their technology, but for their ability to outthink and outlast even the most powerful opponents. Months later, a massive diplomatic summit was held in orbit around Earth, aboard the newly christened Unity Station. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including High Commander Xalarax himself. The event marked the first formal gathering of humanity and the Zorvax as allies. During the summit, a young human diplomat, Sophia Lang, addressed the gathered leaders. Her words echoed the sentiments of an entire planet. "We were once alone in the vastness of space," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "We looked to the stars and dreamed of finding others like us. When we did, we found challenges, yes, but we also found hope. Today, we stand together not as enemies, but as partners. And together, we can build a future brighter than any of us could achieve alone." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the halls of Unity Station. For the first time, humanity's voice carried across the galaxy, not as a plea for survival, but as a call for unity. As the summit ended, Xalarax approached Commander Carter, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the two leaders stood in silence, representatives of two very different worlds. "You've surprised us, human," Xalarax said finally, his tone softer than Carter had ever heard. "You've proven that strength isn't always about the size of one's fleet or the power of one's weapons. It's about strategy, perseverance, vision." Carter extended his hand. "And respect, High Commander, something we've both learned the value of." Xalarax hesitated, then clasped Carter's hand in his own. The gesture, simple yet profound, marked a turning point for both their species. In the months and years that followed, the alliance between humanity and the Zorvax became a cornerstone of galactic politics. Together, they developed new technologies, explored uncharted territories, and defended weaker species from the predations of larger empires. And through it all, humanity's reputation only grew. They were no longer the laughingstock of the galaxy. They were innovators, diplomats, and warriors. They were a force to be respected. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, where whispers of conquest once ruled, a new message began to spread. Never underestimate humanity.